Hello everyone, I'm Todd Hefferman. I'm the SIU writer for the Southern Illinoisan. With me is sports editor Les Winkeler. We're here just to chat about the 6 Hall of Famers that are going to join the SIU Hall of Fame on Friday night. We each did a couple stories about those starting earlier this week. Les, you did Bob Schroeck. Schroeck. Forgive me, he's a pretty dominant pitcher in the late 70s. Even went 12-0 one year. What do you remember about him, and how was he effective using 2 pitches?
Baseball is really a simple game. I mean, it really is.
It is. Yeah.
You can, if you've got enough stuff to throw it by people. Baseball was a little bit different game in those days. It wasn't the big home run hitting game. It was more of a play the entire game, play the field. And as Bob said when I spoke to him, Abe Martin Field, it was a very pitcher friendly field. And the Salukis had excellent teams in those days, great defense, but. As I kind of chided him when we talked a little bit, 12-0 and a 1.02 ERA. That doesn't have all that much to do with great defense and whatever. You're just throwing pretty well to put numbers up like that. And 12-0 and 102. Those are just ridiculous numbers. I don't know that anyone does that in today's game.
And their offense certainly had to be pretty good. They were making the tournament back then. NCAA tournament on a regular basis.
Yeah, that was a very good era of baseball at SIU.
And then the first story I did was on Lauren Haas, a softball infielder. She played a couple different positions. She was a member of their last NCAA tournament team in '07. She was second in career hitting when she left. It was .320 career average. Her 24 home runs. Ranked second at the time. I think they're tied for 4th now with Aaron Stromsterver, which ironically was a pitcher for the Salukis. But she had some good years too, and they had some pretty good pitching back then too. Cassidy Scoggins, who was in the Hall of Fame, was on that team as well.
Hitting 320 in fast pitch softball is a pretty remarkable feat. If you're hitting 260, 270, 280, you're a pretty doggone good hitter, and to have a career average of 320, that's fairly remarkable. And you're right; we're going back to another era of excellent softball of SIU. There, not that they've ever really had a really down era in recent years, but I mean those were some very good teams, and she was a very good player on an excellent team.
They made it 5, 6, and 7. Her senior year, I think Daniel Glosson was a freshman, so they had freshman pitching. She said graduated a lot of guys. But she was the player of the year in 2008, even though the team finished 3rd, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, that says something for the way you played if you get player of the year and your team only finishes 3rd.
So Alison Hiller is a women's golfer that is going in. She was kind of just like Charles Ropiequet and Lauren Haas, who was discovered when the Saluki coaches were watching someone else. She has a great story until she came to SIU.
It was really kind of fun talking to her. Her high school did not have a golf team until her senior year, and then she basically played with the guys team her senior year. But she came from a golfing family. She played golf with her dad and her brother. She said her brother was an excellent golfer. She said she basically just tagged along with her dad and her brother and did whatever they did. So she was a friend of the family, knew Diane Daugherty, got in contact with Diane, and Diane watched her play. She played a lot of summer tournaments and stuff, and apparently they made the right decision when they offered her a scholarship.
Yeah, she finished with the lowest career stroke average for the Salukis, and was an assistant coach for Diane after she left. So she must have did a lot of teaching after she was done.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was really fun talking to her because it really is kind of a unique story. It's probably something that doesn't happen today. It would be very rare that you would take a flyer like that on somebody who only has 1 year of high school golf. So it's an interesting story.
We've had some successful prep golfers who didn't have a team, but they would compete as an individual. Right. And they didn't know anything. They haven't had that when she played.
No, they didn't. So she only played interscholastically her senior years.
And didn't I read one of her parents called Diane?
It was a friend of the family.
Friend of the family.
Right.
So she didn't even know about it.
No, right. So
unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool story.
Well, and then Ropiequet was a terrific story. I didn't actually talk to him because he lives in South America, but I communicated with him over email a couple days. I talked to his brother who lives in Highland Park. That's where they're from. He walked on to the team, and at the team, at the time, the Saluki gymnastics program was like Kentucky basketball. I mean, they had won a couple national titles. They had finished second they'd finished in the top 6 of the previous 8 years when he tried out, and he just was just going just to try to take some pointers from these other gymnasts that were world class, and he ended up making the team as a sophomore, and he really only concentrated on one event, the still rings, and finished second in 1970 and won the NCAA championship in 71. He would have won both of them if he didn't screw up the dismount in 70.
Well, and it's hard for people to understand that SIU had some very good gymnastics, men's and women's programs back in the early 70s, and they also had wrestling in those days. But when Title IX came in, they had to equalize the men and women's programs a little bit. Several programs bit the dust, including wrestling, men's and women's gymnastics, and actually women's. They had a women's field hockey team here at one point too. So I know there's some women's field hockey players in the SIU Hall of Fame too. So
there probably will be some women's gymnastics players eventually. I was looking through Fred Huff's book and some of the history they've had there. But they used to practice on the concourse of the old arena, which I thought was, you forget how wide it was.
Right.
But the wrestlers used to work out there too, and they had to pick up all their equipment and leave if they had a basketball game. And some of their meets would be right after basketball games, and that's how they got some pretty good crowds.
I'm actually old enough to have attended some of those meets. My wife was actually Herb Vogel's student secretary for a couple semesters, so I would end up being in a lot of the girls' gymnastics meets anyway.
Bill Meade just passed away in, I think, 2004, 2006. They have kind of a monument to him out by Campus Lake. It's named after another player that died tragically in either a plane accident or a training accident. But he is in the Gymnastics Hall of Fame. One of Ropiequet's teammates is also in the Gymnastics Hall of Fame. So Ropiequet was terrific. Walk-on worked really hard at that one event, and just was really happy to be honored to go into the Hall of Fame. And then the next one we did was that would be Gallatin. Is the only one left? No, I'm sorry.
Abdulqaadir, those two left.
Yeah, Muhammad Abdulqaadir was a running back. I actually saw play right when I started here, and he was part of that Thunder and Lightning with Tommy Kuntsos, right?
We're talking some terrific football teams. That's just when SIU football was taking root, I guess you could say. The Slookies had come off some really, really horrible years. Jerry Kill came in, and they only won one game his first year, and then the next year they started turning around a little bit. And Muhammad told me a great story. He said that he really felt like he became a Saluki when they played Murray State. Murray State took an early lead, and then Tommy Kuntsos got hurt, broke his arm, and would end up missing most of the year. And 2 plays after the next play after Kuntsos got hurt, Muhammad ran the ball for 60 yards, and then he got stopped just short of the goal line. He scored a touchdown on the next play, and he said when he came back to the sideline, he could just see the look in the eyes of his teammates that we are turning this thing around. It's a new day in Saluki football, and he said from that moment on he became a Saluki, and he said that's like, even though he had some great moments throughout his career, that is kind of the moment for him in his career as a Saluki. And I just thought that was a really interesting, really cool story.
And it's rare you have a guy that leads the school, rushes for more yards in school history, another guy during the same era, and Jerry was a pro at that. He had three guys where he didn't have a single 1,000-yard rusher, but he had 2 with over 900 yards, and Terry Jackson, I believe was his name, was the third stringer, and he had almost 800 yards back in when Brandon Jacobs was here.
Yeah, well, that's a tough choice. Do you give the ball to Brandon Jacobs? Do you give it to Archie Whitlock, or do you give it to Terry Jackson? I mean, that's a nice decision to have to make. And the Abdulqaadir Kuntsos tandem was pretty doggone good as well.
And then the last Hall of Famer was Harry Gallatin, NBA guy. Led the NBA in rebounding, even though he's only 6'6". That's why they nicknamed him the Horse. And was an All-Star several times. And then he came to SIU. He had no coaching experience, but he knew how to run a team, obviously, and he had some great talent. He inherited Seymour Bryson, but had to recruit, Chico Vaughn, who became the school's all-time leading scorer, and Harold Bardell played for him as well.
really, I met Mr. Gallatin a couple of years ago when they had a reunion of the Harry Gallatin teams, and when I was doing some research for those stories, it turned out that when I was a little guy, my dad and I would sit on the kitchen floor and listen to an old Philco radio and listen to the old St. Louis Hawks, Zelmo Beatty, Bill Bridges, Lenny Wilkins, Bob Pettit, those guys, and I didn't know it, but Harry Gallatin was the coach of the team that time. And when Mr. Gallatin came to SIU for the reunion, I finally put two and two together, and I just had a great time talking to him about those guys, because you're talking some Hall of Famers there with Pettit and Cliff Hagan and people like that. So,
and he's in the SIU Hall of Fame, not only coaching basketball but coaching golf. He's coached golf for almost 22 years. They named one of the facilities after him. Great guy to talk to. It seems like he hasn't missed a beat. And he'll be here Friday night to talk as well. And he's in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, just like Walt Frazier. And unbelievable, the guy's history.
He's a really interesting character. And that was just the NBA was a little bit different than it is today. I mean, it was just a different game, and it was a lot slower game, a more methodical, but. He's a great guy to talk to. It's really a lot of fun to reminisce about those old days.
Well, that's the six: Muhammad Abdulqaadir, Alison Hiller, Lauren Haas, Bob Schroeck, Harry Gallatin, and Charles Ropiequet. You can catch up on their stories on our website, thesouthern.com, and there's an online gallery too. And they'll be speaking Friday night. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.